Hi everyone, it's Claire here, and today I'm going to do a quick update at the start of this video, and then I'm going to do the sew along tutorial for making Unpaper kitchen towel, and we're also going to talk about Unsponges because it's pretty much the same process except for the stuffing. So to start with, let's do the update. So I have not done a video in a couple of weeks because my health took quite a turn for the worse, so I haven't really been up for it. And we keep getting these heat waves here in the UK, which I swear is the weather trying to kill me. I kid you not. It makes everything worse. My pain gets worse. I then start suffering with heat-induced migraines because my body does not deal with being like at any kind of heat. I would be perfect living at the North Pole or something. I'm the sort of person that even in winter has the aircon on in the car. So it's pretty much been a tough few weeks. When I have been able to do things, I've been mostly getting used to my sewing machine and building stock for the shop, which is taking a little longer than I had thought because I didn't expect my health to go back a few steps. However, things are well underway, and by next week, the stock get your words out clearer in the beginning of the video. The shop will be stocked and open. So if you would like to get updates on when it will be open, if you'd like to see pads before they go up for sale and fabrics I'm going to be using and that will be available, then please do check out the description below this video for the link to my Facebook group, as that's where pretty much all the updates will be. So check that out. In regard to my new sewing machine, I am absolutely loving it. It's had a few learning curves, and even now sometimes she has her moments, but we're pretty much getting on quite well. I've also had some really good fabric now, which is this. How gorgeous is this fabric? I absolutely love Halloween fabrics, Halloween pads, Halloween fabrics, fabulous stuff. I do not like the scary kind of Halloween fabrics, I have to say, all the skulls and the graveyard stuff. I'm not really into that. Kind of this sort of thing, anything with pumpkins, witches, cats. Well, me and cats, you know that. So this is some fabric I've been trying to track down for a year and couldn't get in the UK. But one of my US fabric buddies, Karen, got me 2 yards and sent it over. So a yard of this will be made into pads for the shop. So keep an eye out for that because there is a limited amount of this. And it is quite hard to get your hands on even in the US. So keep an eye out for that. So I think that's it in updates. In non-pad related news, our car finally gave up the ghost. So we had to go and search out a new one, which we will finally be getting on Friday. Apart from massive oil leaks and a problem with the exhaust, the aircon wasn't working. So I hate to go back to heat again. Oh my God, I can't even tell you. But the new car has excellent aircon, so we are good to go. So that's it in updates. On to Unpaper kitchen towel and Unsponges. So this is a pile I've already made. These are actually a gift, so I hope they don't see this video before I have chance to give this to her. But basically what it is a cloth version of, where did I put it? Kitchen towel that you get from the supermarkets. So instead of having to pay out each week for your kitchen towel, which you may use to mop up spills, wipe down surfaces, clean your taps, etc., and it disintegrates when it gets wet, you can swap over to these lovelies, which are much more absorbent, and you just throw them in the washing machine. Now, I have done a previous video, which is kind of a talk through of other reusables that are not cloth pads for around the house, from Unpaper toilet wipes and face pads, etc., how to make them. But a lot of people asked for a sew along tutorial for the Unpaper kitchen towel, so that's obviously what I'm going to do. So before we get on with the tutorial, I've had a few questions get raised that I wanted to answer in this video since I said I was going to make it. Now the first was a couple of people have asked me about stains with these and how to keep them nice looking, because obviously, you know, you're going to use them to replace what you would use throwaway kitchen towel for. So in my house, that just screams beetroot, because we eat a lot of beetroot. I grow beetroot, we go picking and dig up beetroot and bring it home, and I roast it and all sorts. So I kind of have what's known as a beetroot massacre in my house when I make it. I don't know what happens, how it happens, but beetroot ends up the walls, down the side of the fridge, on the floor. The other week my husband came home and said, "Have you cut your foot?" And it turned out I had beetroot juice on my foot. So it gets everywhere. And mine are white, just like these. What is that? That's going to annoy me. It's a piece of fabric. Okay. So they get a pretty good using with stuff that can dye your fabrics in our kitchen. And I'm yet to have any that need anything intensive done to them. My general routine with them to keep them clean is I wash all my unpaper kitchen towel, unsponges and tea towels together, make them into one big wash. I put them in on a 30 or 40, it's up to you, with detergent and half a scoop of Oxy, and then put them on for a wash. Now for 90% of what you could use these for, they will come out sparkling clean. If you have mopped up red wine or beetroot, a lot of beetroot, if it's a little bit of beetroot, it just comes out fine. But if it's a lot of beetroot, anything like that really, then all the extra I do is, instead of putting that Oxy, half a scoop of Oxy in my detergent, I put a full scoop in the pre-wash drawer and add a pre-wash onto the cycle, and they come out absolutely spotless. If you don't want to add something onto your wash cycle, you can actually soak them overnight in a bucket or your sink with some Oxy and then throw them in a normal wash. That will work too. But if you don't want the extra work, then you can just add it into your machine and you shouldn't have any problems with nasty stains. The next question I had was actually about fabric, and can you use flannel to make unpaper kitchen towel? I would not recommend it. Of course, it's not impossible. I mean, you can pretty much customize anything cloth and reusable for your house with what you have to hand or what you want to buy, what fits into your budget. Any of that will work. But my reason being with flannel is twofold. The first is, if you had two pieces of flannel or a cotton side and one flannel, when it gets wet, it's just going to turn to a mushy piece of fabric. It's not going to clear up large spills. It's not going to have any friction for if you want to clean down surfaces or get something sticky off of a surface, because flannel just doesn't work well in those circumstances. Now, of course, you could use flannel and up the layers and do 5 or 6 layers of flannel for your unpaper towel if you only have flannel, and it will be much more absorbent. Still, in my opinion, not as absorbent as the terry, but it will still work great if that's all you've got in your upcycling and you've got just a ton of flannel laying around. The next reason why flannel isn't top of my choice for this sort of thing is because it peels. Now, it doesn't matter how expensive your flannel is, how cheap it is, if it's upcycled, if it's new, all flannel peels at some point, whether it's 1 wash or 5 washes down the line. Now, if you're using your flannel for cleaning and you're cleaning down surfaces, you're scrubbing off bits with them, you might use a set to clean your floors, something like that, the pilling is going to be accentuated, and when you wash them, they look really, really tatty. Now, this is fine if you don't mind that and you're just like, Claire, I don't really care what they look like. I'm the only one seeing them. It's all good. Then absolutely go ahead and use it. But again, do layers, like I said, not just 2, because that really won't work for you. But I have mine on show in the kitchen in a basket. I tend to roll them and have them all lined up. So I like them to look kind of how I made them in the beginning, sort of how we would treat cloth pads, for example. So that is my reasoning behind the flannel. So that being said, we can finally get on with the tutorial. To follow along with this tutorial, you are going to need your template to start with. So some paper or some cardboard, whatever you want to cut your template out of, or if you really have nothing to hand, you can just use a pen and a ruler straight onto your fabric, because we are just talking a square here. Now I like to make mine the same size as the kitchen towel that you buy from the supermarket, which is 9 inches by 9 inches. I don't know if that varies in other countries, but that's just pretty much standard for here. So you want to draw a 9 inch by 9 inch square and add a tab onto any of the sides for your turning, so it looks nice and neat once you've finished. Now, it's worth noting here, you may be wondering about seam allowances. I thought about this before I did this video, and I wanted it to be for complete beginners, regardless of if you've sewn before. You may never have even used your machine before and you're now thinking, right, I'm going to get that out and make some reusables. This is the one for you, because this is your sew line. We have made the pattern to the size we want, so we don't have to worry about seam allowance, and we're going to sew on these lines as a guide. So it's great if you've got youngsters in your house that want to start learning to sew and use the machine with you as a project. So you need your patterned fabric or a plain cotton, or you can use 2 pieces of terry if you have nothing else to hand in your house. That's no problem at all. And on the back side of that fabric, you want to draw your template like so. Then you want to place it face down, so good side in, that you want to be the top, onto a square of terry that's exactly the same size. Now you can see I have left some extra fabric around the outsides of this pattern, and that's because we haven't added any seam allowance. We've got our sew line, so we're going to want to cut slightly outside of that sew line as to not disrupt our stitches for when we turn and top stitch it. So that's the reason for that. Once you've done that, you can use pins or quilter's clips, whatever you have to hand, to secure it. And now we're going to go over to the machine. Right, so once we're at our machine, you want the side with your tab drawn on to be the side that we're going to sew on first, and you want to start sewing at the bottom inside corner of that. So lift your foot and pop it under, line your needle up with that inside corner that we've got there, and then you're going to want to do a few stitches forward and a few stitches back. Now you may have a fix on your machine, which I actually do have, but I recommend for anything with a turn tab, yes, use the fix, it makes no difference whatsoever, but also do your stitching forward and stitching back, because you want it to be nice and strong when you turn and not to fray. So I'm actually going to turn my fix off. Okey-doke. Where's my foot gone under the table? So you want your foot down and then a couple stitches forward, some back, and then off you go, stitching along the line. If you've got pins or clips in the way, remember to move them as we go along and go to the first corner. Okay, and then when you get to that corner, you want your needle to down and your foot up so you can turn the fabric. Then sew down the next side. Stop at the corner again, needle down and foot up, and we go again, then down the next side, and on the last corner, needle down, foot up. Oh no, it's not the last one. I'm missing a side. No. Now the next side. we're coming along the last side, and again you want to go up to the inside corner of your turn tab. Don't sew into the turn tab space. To do some stitches back, like that. And you want to cut the thread, and you are done at your machine. Okay, now the next thing you're going to need is your scissors, and you want to cut about 1/4 of an inch, just under. You just basically want to cut around the edge, but not too close to your actual stitching. Remember to actually cut round your tab, so you've got your tab of fabric, and do that all the way round. Once you're done, you want to go back to the corners and cut on the diagonal across each of the 4 corners, but remember not to cut your actual stitching. Okay, so now that's done, you want to turn this the correct way out. So doing that through your turn tab, and you want to turn the fabric through until it's the right way round. Now normally you would use like a dowel or a chopstick or something like that to push out your corners of things that you turn. But the joy of these sort of things, especially if you've done a big enough turn tab, is you can actually get your hands in when you're making these. So you can actually use your fingers to push the corners out like this. So I just do it with my fingers, as it's just easier, because terry is surprisingly easy to actually poke a hole through. So if you're using something more pointed like a chopstick, you can actually end up putting a hole in your corner. So now that's done, what you're going to want to do now is to fold in your turn tab, make it all neat so it lines up, and you want to take this over to your iron and press along all the seams. Okie doke, now that's done, you want to put a pin or a clip or 2 on where you've done the turn space, just to keep it nice and in line until you sew over it, and then you're ready to go. Now at this point you want to probably decide if you mind having some terry show along the side. You are not going to be able to get it completely so that your terry won't show, because terry does stretch a bit, and also it's obviously got texture to it, so it will come over the edge. But you will need to take extra steps when you're sewing and roll the terry under if you want to have as little as possible showing. If I show you with one of my ones here, I have some terry around the sides, but I don't mind that. I actually quite like it, to be honest with you, so I just sew mine like that. But it's completely up to you on what you want the finished thing to look like. So now over to the... Okay, so take your side with your clips or pin in. I'm going to sew on that side first, and you want to start sewing in a bit. Don't do it directly on the corner, because it tends to make it just a bit not as neat to do your join there. So start a little bit in, line it up for your top stitching. Now 1/4 of an inch would be usual, but you can do less, you can do a bigger border around the outside. Maybe you want to use a decorative stitch if your machine has them. It's completely up to you. The only thing you have to make sure is that the 2 pieces of fabric that you have turned under in your turn tab gets caught in that stitch. You can't go too far in to miss it. You have to catch it, or you'll have a hole in the side. Okay. So again, we want to go forward a couple of stitches and back a couple of stitches. Needle up and needle down and foot up, and then round the corner we go. may find with your terry, I always find that when you get to the corner and you want to start sewing, because it is quite thick at the corners, you may need to give it a little extra bit of a push just to get it started sewing again. It doesn't happen every time, but it's good to be aware. You don't want your needle squiffing your square. So I just give it a little extra push. Then you want to bring it round and join it up with your other line, and again do a couple of back stitches. Oh, and that was good timing. That was my bobbin alert. Look at that. Very well done. Okay, so that's done there. So after trimming, that is your Unpaper kitchen towel. Now you have a couple of options with these. I prefer to do this with mine. I basically roll them individually like this, and I have a little basket in my kitchen and they're all kind of stacked up like that in the basket. You can have them just on the side in your kitchen in a pile like so, just ready and easy for the family to grab. Or you can go that little bit fancier and turn them into a kitchen towel roll. Now, it looks very effective. I've done it with one of my rolls, but on a practical level, I find it's not as practical for me anyway, in our household with the poppers. I just prefer to be able to grab one rather than the hassle in an emergency of having to unpop them. But what you do is take one of your Unpaper towels and pop two matching, so a matching set. You can put male or female part on, it's up to you. So put snaps at either end, and they both need to have the same part on the underside, so either your male or female side of your snap. Then you get your next one, and this time you put the popper side facing upwards. So on this part of your cloth, on this side the popper's facing down and they're matching. On this side you want the opposite popper, so opposite to what you put on the others, and you want them on the top. Then you can popper them together like so. Then basically you go along your line doing the same thing with each of them. Then they'll be connected in one long row of Unpaper kitchen towel. You then turn them over and roll them like this, and they'll be connected. And keep rolling until you have basically a kitchen towel roll of them that you can actually put on your kitchen towel holder. Now, what you'll also need to make, if you're planning to do this kind of design, well, you don't need to make it. On my one, I actually didn't bother making it, and I used a really pretty wool that I had, and I plaited it, you know, like a hair plait, and tied it at both ends. And then I tie that round it and just put a little bow at the front, or just a little tie, really, not a knot or anything that makes it difficult to undo. And that's basically what holds its shape for you. What you can do is take a strip of your top fabric that you've got, your patterned fabric, just take a long enough strip so that it goes round your entire roll once it's put together. So make this last, because I can't give you dimensions because it will vary on whether you have 5 or 3 or 8. So you need to actually wait until you've put your kitchen towel together and then measure around it. Then you take a long strip of this fabric, fold it in half so that the side you want front facing is inside, and stitch along the bottom and up to the top. Then what you want to do, using your chopstick or whatever long and knitting needle, push it through over the knitting needle so it comes right way up, then close it, the opening at the end, and top stitch around it. Then put basically a popper at either end, and then you can popper that around this to keep it all together when it's on your kitchen roll holder. So it's completely up to you. If they're for a gift, you might want to do that. Like I say, my preference is always to keep them in their separate squares, but both look really effective either way that you want to do it. So that's that. Then we have Unpaper sponges. Unpaper sponges, what am I saying? Oh God, it's the heat. Unsponges. Now, an unsponge to make, you're going to do exactly the same thing. Now, size-wise for your template, this is a large unsponge. This is my smaller size unsponge. Whatever size you want your sponges to be, you make the template in the exact same way, just a smaller scale as we made the one at the start of this video. Then you make it in exactly the same way, except once you've turned it and this is still open, you need to stuff your sponge with your filling before you turn these in and top stitch, so it ends up looking like this. Now, filling wise, my favourite filling is Zorb 1 scraps because they hold a lot of water, but they give the sponge substance, so it's actually like a sponge. I wouldn't recommend filling it with scraps of cotton or flannel because you will just end up with a wet, pappy sponge, which if you're planning to use it for washing up, cleaning pots, scrubbing stuff off the side, you need to have a little bit of substance to your sponge. What you can do is go and get from the fabric shop, they do a plastic netting, which is often used for like tutus and things like that. That is really cheap and works great in unsponges. Also doesn't hold bacteria and is easy in the washing machine. But you don't want anything that's going to degrade inside your sponge or hold onto bacteria. So that's how to make an unsponge. So I think we have finally got there. In one last note, if you are upcycling your terry toweling from home and you have used softener to wash them, if you've used softener on them for a good few years, then you want to give them a couple of hot washes with half a cup of vinegar in the wash, and it will strip out the softener because it will stop them being as absorbent. And as with anything made of fabric, if you're using new fabrics, new terry and new cotton, then prep wash it as per, check out my prep video if you don't know about how to prep and pre-shrink fabrics. Then you want to give them a few more washes before you start using them, or you can start immediately, but know they will gain in absorbency the more washes that they have. So that is it from me. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Do pop over to my Facebook group and I will speak to you all soon.